This week, we continue on the road to the release of Deadpool Wolverine and take a look at the various movies of Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds and asked, are these guys any good? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Half-Ass Movie Podcast, a show where we put together a half-ass themed as an excuse to watch movies. My name is Adam Portress, and I'm joined today by an Alaskan billionaire, Sweet Seanza Kovacs from the internet.
Oh, man, I got all that sweet oil money.
And his one-man Betty White tribute show truly is something to behold. Bruce Leslie.
Betty White. Betty White.
Mm-hmm.
Betty White. That's all I say for an hour. Betty White.
Welcome back, everybody. As I said, we are on the road to Deadpool Wolverine, and as such, we're taking a look back at the movies of Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman leading up to their first venture on the big screen together, and we are rounding out another Ryan Reynolds romantic comedy this week with The Proposal from 2009. It's been a few years since Just Friends. He's not quite that household name yet, but you can see a little bit just under the surface there. We'll talk about that and all that and a bag of Sandy Bullock chips there. But before we get to that, we do want to say a thank you to the people that support the show over at patreon.com/H&P, pre-show, post-show, Dinger Zone. And in the Dinger Zone, we discussed this week the Hugh Jackman movies we're going to be talking about next month. So we're going to finish up our run here with Ryan Reynolds, and we're going to go over to Hugh Jackman, and we're going to round out everything with the Deadpool Wolverine movie coming out and everything. So exciting times. These guys are clearly thrilled with it, so we're going to continue on, I guess. Hell, I don't know.
I was dumbfounded.
If you were thrilled as my co-host, why don't you head on over to patreon.com/HMP with a sale like that? How the hell could you figure out? You know what? You can kiss my grits over here, Sweet Seanza, because guess what? Tim just edited his membership from $1 up to $20. So Tim Applescruff, our good buddy, he's one of the people that's been really supporting us for a very long time. We thank all of you fine folks. So, whatever, you could listen to a lot of other podcasts, and I promise you, listen to podcasts this week, just whatever random show that you're listening to. Listen to the 10 minutes worth of bull crap ads for things that you don't want to listen to that you fast forward through every week. Don't you hate those people? We hate that kind of crap too. So instead of, handing all of your money over to some giant company that will then hand a nickel to Mark Maron, how about you just go over to patreon.com/HMP, whatever level you think that this show is worth, throw that our way, get yourself some more content at the same time. We love you. Thank you so much. And if you can't do that, at least review us on iTunes or shoot us an email, halfasspod@gmail.com. We really appreciate that.
I got to say that this week, well, not this week, for the last month or so, my favorite podcast is not putting out any new shows. And I've gone to the Reddit board. It's called Around the NFL. And I love these guys. I've listened to them for over 10 years. They're my favorite podcast, because football is kind of just the backdrop for their bits, and I love their bits. Their bits are great, and they're also really knowledgeable about the NFL. But there's something happening within NFL media where it might be a contract negotiation or something they're not on. And so I have a routine of how I listen to shows during the week. I listen to our show first on Monday to see where we screwed up and how awful, and I can be filled with self-loathing. And then Tuesday is when they show up, and those Tuesdays are gone. And so I have to find a different podcast to replace that with. And it's been a nightmare. Because there's basically now just three types of podcasts. There is the guys who are yelling at each other all the time, or there's the kind that are the sycophants for, if you're a Star Wars nerd like me, where everything is just everything Star Wars does is amazing, or the third type where it's just old fat guys talking to each other, and I can't. It's so rare to find that tiny little thing where not so many people know about it, but they're clearly doing something different. And I think that that's what we do.
We're certainly giving it a shot here. And again, that's the cool part about the folks over at Patreon and stuff, too, with this and everything. They're kind of plotting out where we're going, what themes and stuff we're going on to next, and giving you guys a vote at that sort of stuff. So you can, if you go, I'm not quite sure that I like this, well, guess what? Throw some money our way and start steering the ship in the other direction. We'd be more than happy to oblige you all and all that kind of good stuff, man. So do that, patreon.com/HMP. Appreciate it. Let's get into it. We're talking Ryan Reynolds movies here and everything. We just got off of Just Friends, which was an interesting outing. Maybe didn't, set the world on fire.
I'd go so far as to say.
Yeah, I think we were all much more excited about that than we had all expected that we would be.
Mm-hmm.
So that leads us into The Proposal from 2009. Sean, what brought us to The Proposal?
Well, I've always been a Sandra Bullock fan, and even if the movie itself stinks, she's always good in it, and she's good in this too. But the problem is, there's a few problems with this movie. One is that her character at the beginning of this movie, within the first half hour of this movie, is so unlikable. As is everybody else in this movie. Everybody in this movie, every character is completely unlikable. They roll out Betty White for a bit so that she can say things like crass things that old ladies aren't supposed to say. Ha ha ha! Isn't that funny? And then occasionally they bring in Oscar from The Office to make you go, huh?
Yeah.
Huh. Didn't know he had it in him.
This is what we're doing. Okay, this is very interesting choices we're making.
And it's weird because this is the type of movie I didn't see. I didn't think this was the case, but there's clearly some improvisation happening in this movie at times because they just let Oscar from The Office go off. Like he is definitely saying things that aren't written in the script.
Yeah.
I like to think that he got the script and that's what it looked like. He's like, wow, this is going to be a bold role.
And the thing about that actor is that he is known for never breaking. Like everybody on The Office broke all the time. He was the one guy that would never break. And so it was a very big deal when he would. So I'm guessing that because he had been on The Office for 4 years by the time this movie comes out. And so he's a known entity in this movie. It's kind of hedging your bets that like, oh, you know what? This will be fun for a lot of people that Oscar from The Office is in our movie playing a role that we've never seen him play before. And it's true. And I guess it's not offensive really, but there is that one line that Sandra Bullock has at the airport where she's like, listen, I'm not a gardener. And I'm not
not her moment to shine there.
And it's a really bad line. Like it just hits you wrong. And to think that this thing was made so late in the day and they're still having lines like that. And it's not like it's funny anyway. Like it's not the kind of joke where you're like, oh wow, that's really funny. Like it's sort of like
that probably gets said for real 50 times a day. Like there's no creativity in it.
Right. And so to see I just felt really kind of bad watching this movie for a while because all of the characters are awful. There's something really icky about this movie, for lack of a better term, where you feel like you're watching something very crass being made. And by that, I mean, like, not that everybody's unlikable and like, so there's like disgusting humor. It feels like Hollywood thinks that middle America thinks this is funny, kind of crass. And it was offending me, quite honestly.
I think we're going to have it. So let me we'll tease and then we'll get into it. I'll go so far as to say I enjoyed this movie. Let's get into it. Here's the IMDb plot line for what the hell is this thing called? The Proposal. As we all know, IMDb 100% correct in everything they say and or do. A pushy boss forces her young assistant to marry her in order to keep her visa status in the U.S. and avoid deportation to Canada. This is written by Peter Crisrell. He had a story credit for Now You See Me Too, but a co-screenplay for a little film called, get this, Crazy Rich Asians. Not too shabby.
Oh,
that
wow.
one. Directed by Ann Fisher, or Fletcher, rather, excuse me, Ann Fletcher. Previous to this movie, she was a dance choreographer and stuff for a whole bunch of movies. Her first film was a little Channing Tatum vehicle called Step Up, not too shabby. She didn't have another hit with 27 Dresses, and then it was off to The Guilt Trip. Just not that interesting. That's all I'll say about that. Hot Pursuit, starring Greasy Reese Witherspoon, and most recently, she directed the Hocus Pocus 2.
Oh, still working.
Still working today, and still continuously, even throughout her directing and everything, still doing dance choreography and other choreography stuff for just tons and tons of things. I think that's still mainly her bread and butter and everything. Movie, of course, is starring Sandra Bullock, Ryan Reynolds, Mary Steenburgen, Craig T. Nelson, Betty White, Malin Ackerman, Asif Manbi, and as we said, Oscar Nunez as well. You know what was funny about this? I don't think I'd ever seen this movie before. But this was a movie whose trailer was played so much, I believed I had seen this movie.
Oh.
I remember.
So this is the first time.
Yeah, I remember specifically all of the Betty White jokes about the boobs and stuff like that. I remember so much of that and just little bits and pieces of the trailer. I was like, I've seen the trailer for this movie a million times. I have not seen the actual movie, though. But I felt like I saw the movie because the trailer was felt omnipresent back in, I guess, 2009.
Well, this is the first time I'd seen the movie, and I didn't really remember the trailer very well, though. I just kind of had this faint memory that it was a green card wedding scenario. And naturally, I would imagine, since Ryan Reynolds is the Canadian one in real life, his character would have been the Canadian character in the movie, which it wasn't when I watched it. But, I like a good green card themed rom-com just as much as the next guy.
I do like for like half a second at one point, she has a little Canadian accent that comes out, but it's only there for like a quarter of a second, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, it's barely there at all.
But it's just like, oh, let's throw a little boot right in there and something like that. I feel like, especially with Ryan Reynolds being Canadian, I'm surprised she didn't lean a little bit more into some little things like that, just to kind of jab him on the set. Which, by the way, I got I watched this on DVD, or on Blu-ray rather. The behind the scenes stuff, it looked like they had a lot of fun making this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like a very light and interesting, just kind of set and everything. Looked like everybody was super happy to come to work and stuff.
Yeah. It's almost as if collections of beautiful, wealthy people are nice places that people want to go.
And listen, you can still have a slog at work, Bruce. You can still have a bad time.
Ahead. On the right are the rich, wealthy, happy people. On the left are the uggos like you. Choose wise. Where are you going? Get back here. I'm not done.
I'd like to go to the sloggery, please.
So Adam, just so this isn't just a piling on fest.
Mm-hmm.
What do you like about this movie?
Here's the thing. This falls under romantic screwball comedy and stuff. And it's a genre of comedy, especially like romantic comedy and stuff, that I really like, putting characters into these stupid situations. Now, I'm not saying that this belongs on the Mount Rushmore screwball comedy movies. I'm not saying that. But like in your pantheon with your Bring Up Baby, your Philadelphia Story, It Happened One Night, His Girl Friday, where you have these two people and they have this dynamic and everything. There's a lot of that here. You're right, Sean, that as far as actual chemistry and stuff goes, they ain't got it. But they do at least play off of each other well enough that you can buy the relationship up to the point. And we'll talk about whether, we end in what area that we end at here and everything. But up until that point and everything, before we get to their actual, romantic relationship and everything, you buy that. You understand all that dynamic totally works, right? She's his boss. He's the little kind of underling guy here and everything. Who's
sure. I mean, this isn't going out on any limbs. This is pretty tropey stuff. And I think that my complaints about the movie are really just kind of complaints about the genre. There's like the idea, if you don't like gory films, then it's not fair for you to review a gory movie. You know what I mean? So maybe it's not so fair for me to review this when I got problems with the genre.
Well,
But
that's
this movie
that's precisely what I'm here for, Bruce. I'm going to be that
Okay.
counterpart to this entire thing here, because I understand where you were coming from with those things, but at the exact same time, when you do those things and do those things well, and again, I'm not putting this one up to the top.
And I'm going to be
It doesn't.
a little more specific here. With most rom-coms, I love the first 2/3 because that's when they're stressing the calm. Then they got to bring the romance home in like the final third of the movie, and that's usually when I quit liking them. So it's very rare that I'm feeling strong at the end of a rom-com because they really do all the silly, wacky stuff in the beginning. Then it gets sweet there at the end, and there's the crisis that has to be averted so they can get married. I mean, the end is so tropey, and they all have to end the same way, or else they'll be rejected by their test audiences. So to me, like I said, it's a genre problem. If you love Hallmark movies, there are people that really look forward to the Hallmark Christmas in July. I'm not one of those people, but it's coming up, and there are folks getting excited. They would probably like this, but I'm probably going to be. It would have to be an atypical rom-com, sort of like what we were talking about
And
last week.
there's a little bit more of that with here, and so here's kind of the screwball within this particular screwball comedy and everything. So we have our initial setup of this woman. She's going to be kicked out of the country, and I like how I also kind of like how loosey goosey the rules really are, where it's just like, oh well, if I just marry him, then everything is a-okay. It's like, yeah, that's how it works. But, you just kind of roll with it. It's like, okay, fine, whatever.
Hey, who among us would not have a better life if we married Ryan Reynolds right now?
It's true. It's very true.
Ryan Reynolds, he would not have a better life. But other than that.
No, I'd be doing way better. Way better.
It's like, goodbye, Blake. Hello, Bruce. This is your hell.
He's like, Ryan Reynolds is doing what he is absolutely required to in this movie, and is being the guy who's kind of caught in the headlights. And the first time that you really see it is when she's kind of doing that, oh, guess what? We're now getting married and everything. His reaction is everything right there, and why, like, you can kind of tell, yep, this guy's going to go somewhere. It might not be necessarily within this movie, but you can see the wheels turning in his head going, what am I going to do? How is this actually going to work? And it's that very much kind of Cary Grant style, like, oh, I'm being caught blind here and everything. And he has a lot of that same sort of thing where Cary Grant's a good-looking dude, but he's also a guy who can have it very much together and also be very much flummoxed and flustered and everything at the exact same time. He has that. She has very much that Katharine Hepburn kind of like, I'm in charge of this situation here and everything. I can't have any sort of faults and stuff, but she's ultimately has very many faults and stuff like that, and that's how those characters end up connecting.
Is it also fair to say that it's probably a high-pressure situation, sort of a maybe a little bit of a tense, stressful situation to be making a rom-com opposite of a living rom-com legend like Sandra Bullock?
And that's what's funny is that, like, because I listened to a little bit of the audio commentary before I was falling asleep. Fell asleep early, not super entertaining, the commentary, but they talked a little bit about that and how this was kind of this Sandra Bullock vehicle. She was the one who really kind of designed all of kind of her character and whatnot, and really just kind of ushered this movie in a particular direction. So any of the faults that, Sean especially sees and stuff like that, and I agree with, you're not wrong, to where her character is horrible. She was the one very much insisting upon all of that stuff happening because she wanted to kind of get a little bit
See
away.
if she could do it. Yeah,
exactly. Away from that little era that she had been previously, and had been, like, people had talked about at this point that this was kind of her comeback movie. And, like, she never really saw it quite like that. But she wanted to come back to the genre, but show that she doesn't have to be the same person that she's been in all of those previous movies and stuff like that. So she has that more of the kind of a mean edge in here. But I think one of the bigger problems is that, like, it's tough to see her humanity at any particular point. I don't think we ever truly see who she is.
And also, I mean, despite the fact that she's like a really mean boss and stuff, and I don't know if it's obvious to you guys or if this is something that maybe I've just noticed, but I think that perhaps she's what folks would call like traditionally attractive.
Well,
did you notice any of that?
I did notice that she is attractive.
I really noticed it. Like, there's the scene where she's in the bathroom and doesn't have a towel, and I was like, wow, she must work out.
Wow, she's very good looking.
I sat there and I was just like, 2000, good for you, Sandra Bullock. Not too shabby. Holy cow.
This is one of the positives that I took away from this movie is that it seems like they put a cap on Ryan Reynolds. Like, hey, we want you to go this far, not this far. So there's no Jim Carrey-ness in him in this movie. Whereas I think the last two movies we saw, that he's still kind of doing a little bit of Jim Carrey.
I think he may have even got a little bit of like, let's not forget whose name's going to be first on the marquee here. Don't upstage the talent.
There is a little bit of that too. And I think that it works for him because this is one of the movies where he's in a totally different swimming pool now, right? I mean, when you have like Adam was telling us before the show started, when you have a movie that costs $40 million to make and it ends up making almost $400 million, like you're in a totally different place than you were with the last two movies we saw. And I think that this is one of those springboards for him. Like this is another Ryan Reynolds got really lucky moment, because now he has even more juice than he had previously. And he is a likable enough guy in all of these movies. But at the beginning of this movie, I can't stand this guy. He's just as awful as she is at the beginning. It just so happens that she is worse. Like he is a bad person too. It's just that she is.
Now, how's he bad, at least at the beginning? Because all he's doing is he just woke up late. So the only thing that this dude is super on time. He's super on schedule for everything. The only thing that could happen to slow him down is his alarm not going off and everything. Power went. So he's just rushing to get through all of, the stuff and everything. Where was the kind of bad stuff? I'm not sure.
And he talks nothing but crap about her behind her back the entire time, which I get. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, you've got a terrible boss. You can totally do that. Whenever he runs into an issue, it's always somebody else saving him and then him just using them basically as a prop to springboard to the next thing. And those things drive me nuts when I see them in screenplays. The other thing, the big one, the big one, and I think I put it right at the top of the notes, is that when you take a screenwriting class, even the most simplistic, so you're thinking about writing kind of class, screenwriting class, the very first day you walk in, one of the very first things they tell you is you don't have your main character wake up at the beginning of your script. And that is exactly what happens in this movie. And this isn't like some writer who can subvert that. Like they're not a strong enough writer to be able to subvert that. Kind of like your Charlie Kaufman kind of a thing, This is just a work for hire writer. And so it was kind of strange to see that right out of the gate. And that also kind of tipped its hat that, hey, this is not going to be some secret thing that you found. Sort of like last week was, where it's like, hey, this is a secret movie that's actually pretty great. This movie is not that movie. And it's unfortunate because there are so many people in it that I like, and I like them in most of the things they've done. But this isn't that movie for me.
I don't know. Like it just seemed like a means to an end. And like, I don't necessarily mind all of that. It's like, you're right. You're by and large, you obviously don't want to start your thing with them waking up. But when the idea is, I suppose, that you're late and that's the whole crux of it. I mean, where else can you really start? You can't just kind of.
The problem also is that because your character's waking up, the character is late. The character is rushed. Right out of the gate, they're like, hey, we don't have any new ideas. Like, you're not going to see anything new in this movie.
Okay, well, let me push back at least right there, because that was the one thing that I kind of wanted to point to, of like, because Bruce almost hinted at earlier, is that one of the things that you at least have with this, and you're right, for something that's very kind of formulaic and everything, we get to that where she proposes more or less, and then they've got to go back to his hometown here and everything. But unlike the story that you obviously think that you're going to get, which is this posh woman goes back to this Hobunk, Alaskan town here and everything and has to figure out how to get everything. And this movie at least has the common decency to twist it a little bit and go, actually, you know what? This kid was rich all along. Now, granted, it doesn't make for a very, we don't feel with this character now because he's rich and everything, and we don't give a shit about anyone at this point. But
yes,
but it is at least a subversion of what we all thought was actually going to happen, which was go back into now you'll enjoy the rusticness of my home little town here and learn how to truly love. And she goes, oh shit, this guy's got more money than I do.
Well, I was going to say that there is a cozy romantic trope where you choose the guy over the money, then it turns out the guy you chose actually has even more of the money. So it's basically like a cop out. You get it all.
It's a lady's dream. Come on. That's why we make these movies.
That's what some people think. So that's how they're written. But I think that the biggest trope they tried to subvert here, because yes, it's very tropey and you have to understand tropes to subvert them. But they're like, you know what? People are going to complain about the age gap. And we're going to say, hey, nobody would say anything if this was about Richard Gere and his younger secretary. Nobody would say anything if it was that. But the thing is, nobody cared. I think they were like baiting for a little bit of troll bait that nobody took, because by the time it came out, people didn't really care so much that the roles were reversed instead of the Jerry Maguire situation where it's the cute assistant who's much younger than the man. They flipped those roles around.
Right.
And I think nobody cared when they were expecting to maybe ruffle some feathers and have a little conversation that way.
Maybe a tiny bit.
Sandy. Because she's Sandy. Who doesn't want to be with Sandy?
But they also don't look at the two of them and go like, wow, what an age gap difference. She's not Helen Mirren and Ryan Reynolds. You know what I'm saying? What are they, 8 years apart? Come on.
Helen Mirren also getting it done too, though.
Yeah.
They would probably cast her to play his mom in the movie the same year. But that's just how bad Hollywood can be.
But that's to me, it's like, I don't know that the age gap is that big a deal, because I mean, sure, they play a little bit of it, but they don't even lean into that all that much. It's a little bit more about station. Perhaps it could have been funnier if it had been a little bit more about age. Had Sandy Bullock now be, a younger guy now or something like that, that could. But at a cool, I don't know, what's she in this, 42 maybe?
Yeah, we're probably roughly early 40s.
Somewhere like that. But, and that's the good thing. Like, I think this is kind of like that perfect point in her career and stuff too, because she's like got just the right amount of age on her, still looking really good and everything. And she commands this movie. Like, yeah, she is running circles around Ryan Reynolds. Now he kind of has to let her do it, but, she's killing the whole movie.
And she's not exactly my type, but I could see why he might be drawn to her.
Yeah, she's if you like a meanie every now and then, like some of us do, it happens.
And that's one of the points that I made in my show notes, is that at the beginning there, when work finds out that they're engaged and everyone's like, oh my God, her? Really? Oh my God. And everyone is just completely flummoxed that this has happened. One of two things would actually happen in real life. One is that, like, the guys who are like, yeah, she's mean, she's the worst, but I get it, she's hot. Like, that happens. And then the other thing is, oh, you're trying to advance your career, because that happens too. And no one has that reaction. Every single person in the office is like, oh my God.
Having worked in office environments, perhaps more than either of you two, if there was like a male-female team that have been working together for 3 years like that, there's already rumors about them, even if there's no reason to have them.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Going to be some people say, I knew it. I told you 2 years ago this was going to happen.
Exactly.
Because there's always those rumors, even if they're unfounded.
I'd always be trying to flirt with the girl down a couple desks down. Come on now.
And the other thing too is that, Ryan Reynolds' character is from Alaska. Have you guys ever met somebody who's from Alaska?
Not to my recollection.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I'm sure I have. I just didn't realize it.
They never shut up about it. They always talk about.
Do they come up in your ear and just say, "I'm from Alaska"?
Within the first 5 minutes of talking to someone from Alaska, it comes up immediately from them. Like that they're originally from Alaska, or that they lived 20 years in Alaska. It happens with every single person who's lived in Alaska. It's the same thing as, like, like a really butchy lesbian, like they have to tell you within the 5 minutes of meeting them that they're a lesbian. It's like, yeah, I figured it's fine.
Yeah, I put 2 and 2 together.
And it's the same thing with the Alaskans, where like, well, I'm actually from Alaska. Yeah, I know. You just told me like 30 seconds ago. I know. And so I find it very hard to believe that Ryan Reynolds' character wouldn't be like all about Alaska, because there's no one more patriotic than an expat, and that is totally who that guy would be.
Yeah, I mean, well, if he wants to keep it secret, he's got to keep it secret because and again,
his family are the Kennedys of Alaska, which I don't think's that big of a flex.
What, the Kennedy part or the Alaska part?
The Kennedys of Alaska. I mean, being, it's like the Kennedys of West Virginia. Okay, give me a break. There are no Kennedys in West Virginia. Although we did have a Rockefeller for a while.
Except for Kennedy, the old MTV VJ.
Yeah. Well, she's the governor for some reason. Just don't tell her because she doesn't know.
Listen, the movie is worn out tropes and everything, but like, something I'll tell you this: when Craig T. Nelson walks on screen, I ain't mad at this movie.
It does go up a notch for sure. Once Coach shows up, it's like, oh yeah, baby, some gravitas.
It's kind of crazy because it's easy for me to think he's not that great of an actor and to pigeonhole him as like sitcom guy from TV. But then he shows up here and reminds me that there's a reason for his being in this season.
Nah, dude's actually like a underappreciated actor. I'll put it to you that way.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of,
they never moved the bodies; they just knocked over the headstones.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. He can do that too. He can also be Mr. Incredible. Like he has a range. It's just a weird one. It's something where you're like, huh, I didn't know that Craig T. Nelson had that speed. Good on you, buddy.
But and there's like so much humanity to his Mr. Incredible performance that I don't think he gets enough credit for. I mean, obviously the animation, bears a lot of that brunt and stuff, but like, there's a lot of voice acting in there that's not too darn bad either, I don't think.
Now, I'm not going to, and also another thing I got to say is that I don't know if I laughed out loud at all watching Van Wilder. I don't believe I did. Like I might have been like, huh, like that, but that's about it.
Yeah.
I laughed a little more in Just Friends, but I literally laughed out loud at the ridiculous scene of the dog being taken away by the eagle. That is absolutely insane.
And I love how we have Chekhov's eagle at the beginning of the movie as well. Like literally 2 minutes into like just, oh, by the way, careful outside. Don't leave the dog out there. There's going to be an eagle go by and get it. You're just like, well, I got a good inkling that in about 25 minutes.
Yeah. I like a joke that's so telescoped or telegraphed that when they follow through, you still love it.
Yeah, they might as well have just put a thing on screen pointing at it, just going, remember this? Remember when we told you about this 5 seconds ago? It's happening for real. And it's kind of great.
Oh, and here's another thing. This is, and I like to point out, I just said something that I like about the movie because it's the hardest I have laughed at any of these movies so far is that scene. But there is no way, Adam, that you don't think that there's certain scenes in this movie where you're like, well, that's a crime against humanity, that green screen shot. They have so many weird green screen shots in this movie where you're like, did they just do a reverse? And the reverse is on a stage with a green screen behind them?
Yeah.
Because this happened several times in this movie.
There's clearly like we needed to do pickups and they were not happy with ADR. They're like, we don't want to do ADR on this. But like when you see the results, you're just like, maybe ADR would have been a better choice. Or maybe you just cut. You just cut.
You know what?
Cut
There's nothing wrong with cutting. Especially, I did feel like this movie would have been okay a little shorter.
Agreed.
No, I thought the runtime was fine. But like when they're walking back from the first plane ride there and everything, and they go back to that reverse, and he's clearly on a sound stage and everything with a fairly bad green screen. It's just hilarious. You're like, whoa, hey, what the hell just happened here? Like, it's not as bad as The Room, but it's like, it's got that kind of feeling where you're just like, oh, we are in a different world right here. Oh, and we're back on set.
I mean, there are scenes, man, when they are on the boat where it literally looks like Annette and Frankie are surfing.
Yes, it does. Oh, yes, it does.
It's
I
pretty
forgot
bad.
about that part. Yeah.
I also didn't her character not know how to swim?
She did not know how to swim, thus the
Right.
boat.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Well, number one, I don't know what you guys know about people that are afraid of swimming. Number one, they don't tend to normally charge towards bodies of water, boat or no boat. They don't tend to do that. Number two, if they truly don't know how to swim, if they're out in the water, dog paddling over to the buoy ain't what they do. They flummox in place, and then then they sink like a rock. That's what people that can't actually swim do.
Sandra Bullock's character looks like the kind of character who's going to take the time to put on the life vest before you go out.
Without a doubt.
But she doesn't. She runs away and then jumps on that thing like she's 007 or something like that. It's like it didn't speak to what that character would do, I would think.
Yeah,
Jason Bourne in the moment. We're going to find out in the sequel. There's talk about making a sequel to this that she's like a Jason Bourne.
Yeah, and where the hell she know how to run a boat? This woman can't do nothing.
This is just setting us up for the proposal to Sandy's Back in Blue or whatever, because
That's pretty good.
She was a Canadian secret agent the entire time.
Bro. She was an undercover Mountie trying to infiltrate the publishing unit.
You know what?
Federale.
This makes so much more sense now. Now it all adds up.
You're right. You're right. Although I'm trying to think of, I don't know anyone in real life who can't swim. I just realized that.
I was at a pool party with an adult male who couldn't swim yesterday.
So so that person stays well clear of the water, I'm guessing.
I mean, he'll sit at the edge of the pool with his feet in it.
Oh, he'll put his feet in it even?
Okay, at least that's a little something.
But it's a small pool that was only 5 feet deep. It wasn't like he's going to drown in it, but he still wouldn't get in.
I do wonder about because that is one question that I have to when obviously like your 3-footer, if it's up to midsection at most, I feel like that's a happy place that's a happy medium. You're still standing, you're still above water, but you're kind of that's a no-go. Is that a no-go?
I stand near water.
Listen, I'll go all the way underneath the water, everybody. I ain't afraid. I'll do it. I'll swim in some more.
I only go up to my eyebrows, and I'm going any deeper than that.
He has the Godzilla,
No.
That's how he just
that makes
sits in his
Silas
own pool.
Godzuki.
From Europe. Silas enjoying Europe right now.
Nice. Hey, does he get this podcast early? Is that how that works?
Yeah, but it's in German for some reason. Das Heroes Movies and Podcasten.
Listen, if you're one of them German people, why don't you shoot us an email at halfasspod@gmail.com. We want to hear from you, Germans.
I wonder what the Germans think of Sandra Bullock. Love her or hate her? Is she like a female David Hasselhoff?
Maybe they don't know her at all. Like maybe it's just uniquely American.
No, I would say based upon the box office, domestic v international for this particular film, I'm saying Sandy travels.
Yeah.
Sandy travels pretty well, I think.
If there's a country that's going to love a movie like Speed, it's going to be Germany.
Yeah. Das Speed.
Yeah. Listen, let's talk about, because this is the weirdest part, and I kept watching the movie going like, where are we going? What are we doing with this? Because when we get back to Alaska here and everything, he's going back home, and so he's a rich kid who just wants to be a publisher. Which, by the way, I just love it. I love the rich kids who just like, but I want to read and tell people they did a really good job on this novel, and then publish that novel and get a whole bunch of credit for it.
As a person who has published some work, I think the absolute easiest path to being a publisher would be being a rich kid.
Yeah, without a doubt.
The one thing a publisher needs.
The other thing about it too is that if you are a poor kid in New York trying to make it, you can stay in New York because your parents keep floating you that money. that rent money every month. It's the same problem that movies have. Like, oh, there's a director. That director is a kid fresh out of college, just shot his movie. Oh, he's still in LA. Has he worked in 2 years? No, his parents are paying for his apartment.
Yeah.
Yep.
That happens all the time.
But
opportunity costs a lot.
So
It does.
he gets back to his place and everything, and doesn't want to accept all of his riches. So you don't really feel for him at this point. You're just like, oh, so even if you don't accomplish your dreams, you got one hell of a golden parachute sitting right here for you in the middle of know nothing Alaska. And to top it all off, you got your former high school sweetheart there, and college and high school sweetheart, who is, the hottest lady in all of Alaska, no doubt.
Yes.
And for some reason is still single, and you were like, well, I'd rather go publish a silly book in New York City with a world that doesn't care about me. Though again, we talk about this in a lot of other shows where we're just like, why are any of these people making these horrible decisions?
Hey, if it make me a wealthy Alaskan with a hottie next door, I would give it a try. I would give it a good 15 years to see if I
all
like
of the notes are there, but to credit or its damnation, I'm not quite sure which, but to have that kind of avenue that at least this film had an opportunity to go down, to say like, hey, maybe he might rekindle this relationship. It leaves a question in the air, but ultimately it leaves you wildly lacking and wanting, because you don't think that he should be with the Sandra Bullock character.
I think it fails to clearly define a victory scenario.
Oh, that's good.
I don't think we know what victory looks like in the terms of this film at the end.
Also, I don't think that we're not supposed to side with Ryan Reynolds' character. We're supposed to ultimately side with Sandra Bullock's character. Yeah, she is the main character.
That was what I wrote here as one of my little questions. I just said I don't think that many would argue that Sandra Bullock isn't the star of this movie, but take her out of this movie, and I don't think this movie even survives.
No, not even close, man. It's running just on her on her star power alone. So can I go through my problems with this movie?
Okay,
let's hear it.
All right, so one of the things that I can't stand about this movie is that it's clearly written by people who have been in Hollywood too long, and so they have no idea how things actually work. The computer that runs on dimes, because it's in such a small town that it runs on dimes. That's never existed.
I like that. I thought it was stupid and dumb, and I like the fact that it never existed, and it is just something that's just off the wall and crazy that this dumb little Alaskan town would not only have. It's funny because it's an iMac too, but it's an iMac that is hooked up to the internet that takes dimes and is still a dial-up modem, which I don't like. It doesn't exist. It's stupid. It's there for a dumb comedy joke, but it worked on me.
You can't go full on farce then go back to the real world. So when you got that, like, this is full on Better Off Dead.
I don't think that
I don't got a dime powered computer.
All right, I think there's a little bit of gray matter in between those two wild and crazy scenarios, but okay.
It's the problem of it's the problem with coastal elites, in my opinion, is like, oh, we look down on you because you're an idiot. Because you don't like, it's the thing that used to happen where somebody would show up from LA and they'd be like, hey, do you have a Starbucks in this town? It's like, do you see the skyscrapers around you? There's been a Starbucks here for 30 years.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
I do hate that. Where it's just like, do you have this thing that everyone has? Yeah, we do. We've had it forever. Shut up.
Yeah, there's 15 of them. If you squint, you'll see them all.
I had a girl like that because we mentioned earlier that she was like, back in the Hamptons. I'm like, if I got to hear about the Hamptons one more damn time, I'm like, no one gives a shit about the Hamptons, dude. She would throw in the Hamptons as if the Hamptons ran the world. We were just like, no one cares. If you had any clue how little anyone cares about the Hamptons, you would just crawl into a hole.
That's funny, man, because I had almost the exact same thing happen to me when I was a kid working at Starbucks. There was a girl who also worked at that Starbucks who was from New York. But here's the thing. she was from Rochester, New York.
No.
She would constantly talk about how there was nothing to do in Charlotte. And I'd be like, you are from Rochester.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, there's so much to do in New York. I'm like, hold on. You are not from New York because you keep making it sound like you're from the city. You are from Rochester, New York. You couldn't believe all the buildings when you first came to Charlotte. Like, let's not pretend that Rochester is this booming mecca of civilization and Charlotte is nothing. Like, let's put the brakes on there. I'm from Hartford. I live 2 hours from Rochester. I know exactly what Rochester looks like.
Girl, you ain't even Buffalo.
Exactly. Not even Buffalo.
Mm-mm.
Exactly.
And Buffalo is, oh boy.
I wish you were Albany.
Not so bad. Yeah.
Buffalo, nothing to write home about. I think that's on their license plate.
So, okay, so here's another thing, and take this what you will. This is just Betty White being loopy, like Betty White in the woods doing the Inuit spiritual dance thing. Like that's fine. Like that, you know what? Like it bugs me, but it doesn't matter. It's Betty White. You want her to do as much crazy stuff as you can and get as much Betty Whiteness out of her as you can.
Here's where my pushback comes. Not a Betty White guy, really. I find her cloying in the majority of things. I thought that throughout her entire career, we gave her far too much credit for stuff. I'm not saying she's a bad lady. I'm not saying she was a horrible person. Just a little bit too overpraised. And the funny thing is I was working at the movie theater, and just before her death and everything, they were doing this big giant thing that they were selling pre-tickets for and everything. Betty White's 90th birthday celebration, a live cast and blah, blah, blah. And even when that was going on, I had a little thing and I was just like, you don't want to be morbid, but I was like, I don't know that we should be in son of a gun. Not a week before she kicks off and then they, go.
Sean?
Yeah.
Is that one of the hottest takes you've ever heard? I don't like Betty White. She's cloying.
It's a very Portraits Lane. You know what I mean?
There's only like 3 people that everyone in the world likes: Dolly Parton, Betty White, and I don't know, somebody else.
Listen, I like Dolly.
You picked one of them.
It's just like a very Portraits Lane. And look, I understand where Adam's coming from with this. Like I it got to an oversaturation with me too, where I was like, look, Betty White is lovely, and I'm glad that we all love Betty White. But you got to stop rolling her out into these things. Like, she's 90
an old
years
lady
old.
and I said a curse word.
Yeah, we get it. It's that Simpsons joke. I'm going to go haul ass to Lollapalooza.
Yep.
It's that joke. And it's just always that joke. And that's fine. And she brings that thunder every time she's in the thing. But I'm not like I like Betty White. And it's fun to see her. But
God bless
where
Betty
it's going.
White. Yeah,
whenever you see her, you know where it's going.
Yeah, you're gonna get a Betty White show here and everything. It's gonna be fine. She's gonna say her quips and everything. And she's like she's like a saucier, smaller version of my gone grandma here and everything. But my grandma was never that entertaining. So that's what I take from Betty White. It's like, at least maybe.
So this is more of a.
My grandma
you're not
was
big
not
on your
funny.
grandma thing.
No. That's like that's
tell
only
me,
a
Adam,
portion of it, maybe.
You ever watch a show called Hot in Cleveland?
No, I don't know what that is.
I think you need to go check it out since you like Betty White.
Really don't, Adam. You're going to hate every minute of it.
She's very hot, and she's in Cleveland.
I don't know. It's one of those things where it got to the point where everybody was just doubling down on Betty White so much that it's just like, no, I'm sorry, but I eventually got to call BS and just throw my hands up and be like, no.
Now that Betty White is Dirty Dancing in Heaven with Patrick Swayze, who is the go-to grandma now? If you needed like this Betty White character cast, who is the Betty White now that you cast?
Leslie
I'm an old
Uggams.
lady who says who?
Leslie Uggams.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Who is that?
Blind Al from Deadpool, and she was in a couple. What's that other thing we just saw her in recently that we liked?
She's in. It's the video game.
Me. Judge Dredd, was it?
No.
That's the only thing I think.
It's the video game show that's on Fallout.
Yeah, that's it.
And she was in Deadpool as the blind lady.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, she's pretty good.
That's not a bad one right now.
That's a good one. That's a good one to choose. Actually,
I was thinking of the the actor who played like the older lady who had sunbathed in Something About Mary, and you saw her wrinkly boobs, and then she was also the landlady in Kingpin.
She is, weirdly, she came up earlier this week because she's a really good actress.
Yes.
And when she auditioned for, I think There's Something About Mary, the Farrellys did not want to hire her because that they thought she was too classy for that role. And she came as the character for her audition, and they didn't recognize her. And they were like, this lady is perfect. And it turned out to be her. Isn't that
Wonderful.
neat?
That's who I think they would cast. That's our next go-to granny lady.
So can I keep going about the things that I hate about this movie that
please.
drive me crazy about the Hollywood eliteness of this movie? There is no way in hell that this house has a bike like in the driveway that's just a 10-speed road bike. It would absolutely be a mountain bike. It's totally impractical to have that skinny tire bike. They would never have that bike.
Hey, what's Kermit going to drive when he comes over? Come on.
That's like beach territory. That's not up in the mountains territory.
The Alaskan town that Ryan Reynolds is from has its own airline. The airline is named after the town he's from.
Sitka Airlines. I guess they have one route. That's just that Juneau to Sitka.
It makes me crazy. The internet is dial-up. Get out of here. You should be ashamed of yourselves that they're using dial-up. That is insane. Nobody has better, faster internet than like a town in the middle of nowhere because that's all they got.
Sometimes.
It's not always true in Appalachia.
There's a store in the hometown that's called The Fudgery, which I guess they just sell fudge out of. There is no tourists in this town. There would never be a store where like just the locals show up at the Fudgery. Makes me insane.
You're not in Gatlinburg.
We're in a remote Alaskan town. We have 3 stores: the liquor store, the general store, and the Fudgery. Load up. Make sure you get enough fudge before the 30 days of night hits.
Ridiculous. Malin Ackerman lives in a town where she's the hottest lady for like 1,000 miles. There is no way that lady's dance card isn't full all the time. And also men from the deep wilderness come in because they've heard of stories of this lady.
There's a blonde lady in this town, and it's unbelievable, dude.
There's no man in 200 miles in any direction that has a single possession that she wants, because if she wants it, he's already given it to her.
Exactly. I mean, that is it makes me crazy. Also, when Sandra Bullock starts warming up to her town, starts warming up to this town, she goes from Prada to LL Bean. But here's the thing is that this lady is smart enough, this character is smart enough that she would have already had LL Bean all packed. Like she might have like a dress, a cocktail dress, but she's not showing up in high heels. She's too smart for that. It makes me insane.
Yeah. But this is also the same woman who packs that nightgown for her
that is true.
Singular staying in a thing. Like, no, the answer is the underwear and a t-shirt. That's what everybody does, Yeah.
That it's like that. It's even weirder if that's what you have to wear when you're alone.
Yeah. It's also, I need to just put this out. It's very lacy, very nice.
Who cut all the wood at this house? Like every time you turn somewhere outside, there's just giant piles of logs.
I assume it's the Latin guy. I mean, he's the only laborer they have in town.
That honestly, Oscar. Okay, like you saw his name in the credits and stuff, and you're like, oh wow. And then when he shows up as the waiter, at first it's just like, that's pretty wild, dude. That he got a whole opening credit. For that, and he's a waiter in here. And then when he continues to show up and he's got just job after job, so hilarious, just great. I love how he is everywhere, and he's constantly going to be like, "You remember me, right? Remember?
Yeah.
Remember
for some reason, he reminds me of like Sean Gunn's character from the Gilmore Girls. He always seems to have a different job every couple episodes.
Just fun stuff, and again, like you said, he's the guy who's like going, listen, I'm going all out for this. I don't really care. And it is wild that this is during the office time, because I don't know. It just seems like something he would do like just before the office, and then would want other people to see.
My favorite line of the movie My favorite line of the movie is, "He's the only exotic dancer on the island, but we're lucky to have one."
Yeah. Yeah, that's also like, that's something that is kind of sweet about it, is like, they're okay with how kind of mediocre whatever their town is. Like, that's a nice little refreshing thing that they're just like, listen, it is what it is. We're happy to have what we got over here in Alaska in our little nothing. But again, that's all truly negated by the fact that everyone's just ridiculously wealthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they've got that oil money, being Alaska.
Yeah, if it was like if it was that town where she was that Richard that came in and everything, and he had to, kind of, build up from nothing and stuff like that to try to impress her, or whatever the, generalized trope would be, it might work a little bit better than this, because ultimately, like you said, we don't really find ourselves rooting for any of these characters.
Have you, and also here's another thing that really bugs me, and this is just another movie thing. Have you ever been in a situation where family members are forcing other family members to just have a real, like, deep kiss?
No.
I've never been in that situation ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, but lay a big one on her, and then just everybody's like, watch that. Like,
No,
for
you can
what
do better than
reason?
that.
What reason,
Yeah,
Uncle Paul? So you can, have some thoughts later? Get out of here.
Exactly. That immediately
What?
would bring other family members to go, hey, what's going on with that guy?
Yeah, and in the
Grab
middle,
her ass, buddy.
I guess about to say, in the middle of it, somebody just goes, grab her ass. It's like, oh, wait a minute, you're not directing this makeout session. That's not how this works.
And this is not a complaint. This is a definite thing that I love about this movie, is Craig T. Nelson's driving green that's in this movie,
yeah.
where he's got that green in the middle of the water, and he's shagging balls to the tee, or to the pin. Oh man, what a I didn't even know I wanted something like that till I saw that. I was like, oh man, I gotta get a house on a lake, and I gotta get one of them.
Didn't he say
It
the
was
balls
perfection.
are biodegradable and stuff too? So they
Yeah.
even made it like, hey, listen, we're not even polluting over here, dog.
I
Yeah,
wanted
that's
to clog
fake.
up a whale's blowhole.
That is.
Yep.
The mighty fish.
This one, it was a catfish though, so this, the budget just wasn't there.
Here's the last thing. Here's the last note I got about this movie. All of this entire movie takes place in 72 hours. That is including flights to and from Alaska. 72 hours, all of this happens.
But they'd already known each other for 3 years. This is exactly what they had bottled up and ran through in their mind. They spent every night before they fell asleep imagining exactly this convoluted scenario.
I'm not talking about that.
He's
part.
just talking
I'm
about being exhausted.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
He
she's
ain't
a
running
type A
nowhere.
person.
He ain't running nowhere by the end of that movie.
I love that. Just the flight alone from New York City to rural Alaska has got to be a long time.
Yeah, I mean, you got to figure that that's probably at the very least 5 hours one way.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they're back in New York by the end of it here and everything, living out the dream where you left your high school and college sweetheart back in your thing and left with, and your boss who was just mean as hell to you, but hey, you made out once, and your bits kind of smashed together in a room once.
You touched her butt when she was going down a ladder.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, who amongst us hasn't kind of propped up a butt when we're trying to just be helpful, of course. Helpful only. But ultimately, the big thing is that, like, when you get to that kind of kiss and stuff at the end, you're like, okay, maybe. You don't really buy it.
Feeling it at all.
Yeah.
They don't feel fun together. They don't feel like they did all of this work together either. It feels like half the movie they're dealing with someone else.
Any idea, like, did they have any kind of offstage, like, friendship? Do they seem like they don't know each other?
But looking at the behind the scene video here and everything, it looks like everybody was having a really good time. I don't think anybody had any bad feelings at all. This looks like a very like you can tell when people are faking having a good time.
Mm-hmm.
This felt like people were actually, having a good time and stuff like that. That's what it felt like to me.
Just the lack of chemistry almost seemed like trying to overcome disdain. That's why it confused me.
Hey, listen,
that's good.
I wouldn't be surprised if, like, old Sandy Bullock's probably a little bit of a ball buster. Like, and
no,
probably
sir. I see.
deservedly
You mean
so.
fun-wise. You mean fun ball buster.
Yeah, she might get on you a little bit, but at the same time, too, I think she's probably a no-nonsense lady who's, like you said, she's producing stuff. She's in charge of things. I think that she's somebody who has a head on her shoulders and is pointed in a particular direction, and I could see maybe stepping over some people if and they get in her way. I don't know.
It would probably be hard to overlook the hideousness that is Ryan Reynolds. I mean, I understand he might not be the best looking guy.
Gross.
True.
But how difficult it is. I think the most impossible thing of all
Jason
of this
Patrick.
is him wearing those headphones and then stripping all the way down naked, still with wired headphones and stuff. How's that working? That's
Prison wallet, my friend. That's where I always kept my iPod.
That's the most unbelievable part of all of this is like you kept those inside of your ears. They didn't pop out at any particular point. So, And she's got to get over this getting scared of this little dog thing. Kick that little sucker once and he just flies right across the room. You ain't got to worry nothing about that dog the rest of the day. Or she just could have let the eagle keep it. So let's get to our final recommendations. Bruce, what are your thoughts on The Proposal?
Pretty rote rom-com stuff. The stuff I don't like about this is stuff I don't like about rom-coms. They tried to do a little something original, but not story-wise. They were just filling in the characters and the parts. Sort of like just moving around the Mad Libs answers a little bit, but not really changing the feel of the thing. So I'm going to say this goes down around one of the lesser movies for both Ryan Reynolds and Sandra Bullock. I'm going to give it 2 Deadpools, or however we're rating stuff now.
Frowny face Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, frowny face Ryan Reynolds.
Woo. Sean.
I'm not a fan of this movie either, and I really wanted to like it because I like Sandra Bullock. If you're looking for a movie like this that's really good, it's called 13 Going on 30, and it stars Jennifer Garner, and it is a vastly more superior movie. I think that the issue is it's an issue of chemistry. It's an issue of the people who are writing this movie don't know how regular people work because they have been in Hollywood for too long. And I think that they were completely bankrupt of ideas. And so for me, this is a Ryan Reynolds crying emoji.
For me, I like this movie. I don't love it, but I don't hate it quite like everybody else does. I think it's fun. It's fun for what it is. It's got a lot of flaws. I think you're 1000%. Oh my God! Hold on. 2 seconds. So there's a problem with my computer. There it is. I have now fixed it. Ultimately, though, my biggest problem is that you just don't like any of the characters at the end of the day, and that really, when you've got this romantic comedy and you've laid out so many different things, so many different paths for your characters to go down, you really only could end up at this particular point. But ultimately, it's not satisfying. It's not satisfying because you don't care about any of the characters involved. And everyone is just kind of a rich piece of garbage who mostly just were garbage to each other and stuff like that. Instead of communicating, they just kind of did whatever they wanted to do. But let's be honest, that is part and parcel to a lot of these movies, to where if we all communicated correctly, you'd have no conflict in your movie. So you do need some of that. But there's worse things out there. I think, Sean, you're right. I think your Miss Congeniality is a great Sandra Bullock movie to pull
that's
from.
Really good. The Heat's all right. I would say I love that movie.
Her most recent one, and I was trying to pull it up, and that's why the IMDb just decided to make an appearance
the one
on
where
the show.
she's the writer.
Yeah, where her and Channing Tatum. Damn it, what is the name of that film?
The Lost City, maybe?
Lost City, that's what it was. She's really good in that. Channing Tatum is really good in that. To have another kind of younger guy situation and stuff like that in that movie. She's really, really good in it. And Daniel Radcliffe as the villain. And he's quite good at it too. He's really kind of
nice.
digging into that little meanness in him and everything. It's very very fun.
You have gotten my interest.
Very very fun. So check that Sandra Bullock movie out, everybody.
Hey, I just figured out our rating system.
Okay.
So, the way that we used to do it was the Robin rating system.
Mm-hmm.
I think because we're never going to be able to find something as perfect as the Robin rating system was originally, why don't we go a totally different way with this and make it binary, where it's either don't like or like, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we call it something like, is this fart or art?
Fart or art. Hey, I
like it. There's no in between. I like it. Everything is one of those two things.
Yeah, fart or art.
Perfect. Guess what? I'm writing this down so we don't forget it. Fart or art. This is what my parents thought of when they were sending me to college.
Well, when you got a movie show called Half-Ass Movie Podcast.
Hey, listen, man. you do what you got to do, everybody.
That's right.
And we put together
or art. Fart.
You
or
need
art.
sound effects. I can come up with some for if we pick art. You come up with the ones for fart.
Well, that is it for this episode of H&P, talking about Ryan Reynolds. We got one more time, man. One more movie to go. And here's the thing. I picked a movie for our last Ryan Reynolds film to really focus on Ryan Reynolds, more so than just about any other particular factor. That's why next week we're going to be talking about Buried from 2010. It's 1 year later in the career of Ryan Reynolds. We're going to see how it is, because he is pretty much the only person on screen. He never really leaves one spot. And this movie to me is quite good. I can't wait to hear what you guys kind of think about it. And
it's called Buried?
Buried from 2010. Mm-hmm.
4.5 hour runtime.
No, it's a good brisk. I think it's under 90 minutes.
What?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like us at all.
Well, it's 95. I know that's too much for you, but Rodrigo Cortez's Buried from 2009.
So, I don't think that we used the new rating system for the movie that we just saw, The Proposal.
No. I'm going to say fart.
Fart.
Bruce? Is he actually trying to fart? Is that what's going on here?
I think he's looking for the sound effect.
No. Listen, the kid's got to eat some beans to get some stuff together. We'll work on that later.
None of that came through?
No.
That's all right. You're lucky.
Amen. So next week we're going to be covering Buried, everybody, and then right after that we're going to get into some Hugh Jackman movies. And again, this is all leading us towards Deadpool, Wolverine here and everything. So a lot of fun stuff coming. So check us out next week when we're talking Buried. Sean, in the meantime, where can they find more of us on the internet?
We have got another podcast called Star Wars 30 Questions, the Acolyte 30 Questions, where we ask 30 questions of the latest episode of Star Wars, The Acolyte, that is running on Disney Plus. No one has anything to say about it. There's no opinions about it, but check it out, won't you?
It'll just be a show where we're just saying what happened. That's all.
Yeah.
No true. I mean, the takes are going to be mild at best, I would say.
Question 1, do you like Star Wars? Question 2, is The Acolyte a Star Wars show? Like that. It's like that.
Nothing beyond that. Who's to say? We don't know. There's 30 of them. Why don't you check us out wherever you find our podcast. That is it, everybody. Join us next week for more Ryan Reynolds and Buried. For Sweet Sean's and Kovacs from the internet, Bruce Leslie, I'm Adam Portress, reminding you that if you cut every corner, there'll be more time for play.
Fart or art. Fart or art. Fart, art, 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 art.